Thank you, that's great. In reality, how interested or how likely is it for a Kiwi company to actually enter into the American market? I think it's wonderful having you here in New Zealand and see the food, but we are the other end of the world. And how will we view in reality?
So, absolutely. So, it's a perfectly fair question, and we all have perspectives on this. Just, in terms of my perspective, now, I got to admit, having met a number of Kiwi entrepreneurs and Kiwi investors, my instinctive reaction to your comment is to say that, Kiwi entrepreneurs are just like any other entrepreneur, including entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley. They're just nicer. But, and I mean that sincerely, but I also mean that we don't care where you're from. Right? Now, the entrepreneur cares because it's hard work for the entrepreneur to bounce around the world. But, we don't go around the world ranking countries and saying, let's pay attention to Israel and let's not pay attention to New Zealand, and let's pay attention to India, but let's not pay attention to Finland or something like that. We don't think about it that way. Every entrepreneur is their own unique opportunity.
Just a byproduct, if I refuse to invest in the year, I'm basically all good for basically.
So, basically Silicon Valley is all built on international entrepreneurs. There's not many actual, local people in the area. It's about over 60% of everyone in Silicon Valley comes from Silicon Valley, including myself. I moved to Silicon Valley from Sweden a little over 4 years ago. And again, all companies kind of get pitched to do all that. The only thing we require as an investor require is that you have your information in place. It's not that they are there. Right. So if you're investing in a company, then you want to make sure that it's close. But you can still keep larger operations or developments in the home country, things like that. If you want to scale your company, you want to start meeting with customers and partners, you want to pitch to the investors, you want to make sure that the management team is in place. You might also float your company and have the headquarters in Silicon Valley and subsidiary developments in your home country. So that's, they have an American company and, a New Zealand company.
I don't want to hold the microphone, but I just, because our experience in my company is particularly that, is that we've got, we launched product here out in the global world, but the reality is it's taking, a good year just to establish a bank account. We sell, we've got a digital, subscription-based stuff. You try and get $10 back subscription a month into your bank account in New Zealand. And it's these issues because everyone's converting $100,000. So in reality, and there's
that is the reality for entrepreneurs from all over the world that are looking to grow their companies on a global market. And Silicon Valley is, a great place for you to grow globally because you get access to, corporations that are really interested in the latest new technologies and solutions. As we're seeing a trend that's happening in Silicon Valley is that most of the corporations, whether they are, producing toys or if they are, producing beer, they want to be their innovation centers, the ones that are looking at the latest technology solutions, all in Silicon Valley. They have opened up innovation centers, venture centers, M&A centers. So even if, I'm from Sweden, one of our largest telecom companies is Ericsson, I'm sure you know about that company.
And all the Swedish companies that want to talk to Ericsson because they have this awesome solution, they want to look into, being part of their solution, they come to Ericsson in Silicon Valley to talk to them. And that's where also Ericsson grabs them for acquisition.
So it's kind of all messed up in that sense, but that's because it's kind of where the innovation tech is and things are. So if you want to get access to the Asian companies and really big ones, to the European ones or others, you can actually get access to them. Which is great for the company. If it's in the right space.
So the big issue for you as an investor, right, is see this happen all the time. You know, we've invested in the company here, the company is here, and now to go global, they've got to leave. And you're not going to leave as the investor, but the entrepreneur has to leave, and they're saying, you know, so then you've got this question of were your expectations aligned at the beginning? And this is a problem frequently, where an entrepreneur has shown up in Silicon Valley because they know they've got to come to Silicon Valley, but their investors back home are saying, no, you know, we want you to stay here, and then you have this tension. So, you know, part of solving the problem, again, goes back to expectations day one. What are we going to do here? If you agree that the future is to go to Silicon Valley, then you set up the company from the beginning so that it's easy to go to the other market. And so you preempt some of these banking, legal, visa, incorporation, intellectual property, tax problems by starting at the beginning with aligned expectations that this is the way it's going to go. But if sort of, you know, halfway through the first product launch, somebody says, oops, we got to move, it can get really expensive really quickly.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I think in making that answer, you kind of answered my question. Thanks very much for your presentation and all of you for organising this and coming down. My question was, Bill, if you could expand on one of those sort of expectations, one of the bullet points of the conversations you want to have with the entrepreneurs who are investing around use of funds and the distribution plan and the location and everything else. Could you maybe expand for us a bit more on building a concept of like a shared understanding or expectations together? Because that's something that struck a chord with us.
Yeah. So the biggest problem entrepreneurs have is telling the truth. It's really hard. I mean, and I'll tell you, I mean, because in order to raise money, the entrepreneur has to stand up with high confidence and say, this is the future. And, you know, we're going to build this product, we're going to deliver it on this date for this amount of money, and we're going to get these customers, and we're going to go after this market. And you have to say that as an entrepreneur to raise money because you have to sound like you know what's going on. But, you know, what you know in your heart is you're not sure, right? You just don't know if you're really going to be able to deliver, if the feature set's right, if those customers are going to buy. You do all the right things, right? You're trying to talk to customers, you're trying to, you know, but you just don't know. And the hard part about the investor-entrepreneur relationship is the entrepreneur is always saying, yes, this is true, don't worry, I believe this is true, my numbers are conservative, right? And you know they're lying, right? But you don't want to say, Bill, you're lying to me, stop it, right? But you've got to create a relationship where you can at least give the entrepreneur room to say, well, this is the plan, and I know it's possible that I'm going to discover that it's going to take longer, shock, or cost more, shock, right? You've got to be able to have that dialogue about sort of every element of the company. You know, you've got to be able to say, you know, is this the right person? Is this the right next hire? Is this the right first market? Is this the right feature set? Is this the right branding? Is this the right investor? You've got to be able to have those conversations. But if you create this barrier because you have this asymmetry between the entrepreneur who wants your money and you know, wanting confidence that they know what they're doing, you know, you can very easily get out of alignment in terms of expectations. But so for you guys in particular, this issue of, you know, when and if you're going to go outside of the union, right? You know, and does it mean you have to set up shop and get investment in Silicon Valley or maybe somewhere else in the world? You know, the entrepreneur may feel because you're here that the entrepreneur has to say, oh no, I'm loyal to New Zealand. You know, I will always be here in New Zealand. They might say that because they
keep being loyal to New Zealand. There's no, you know, I mean, I'm a large brand ambassador for Stephen Hines in Silicon Valley, right?
Absolutely.
So,
where are you from again? I can't remember.
I say it like 10 times a day, I think, yeah. No, but I mean, you can still do a lot. I mean, that's the thing, they're all on borders. There's no, like, we're all over. The new generation of entrepreneurs, they need to be able to move across easily. They can't be, you know, hinders by. talk to potential partners and customers early on and test it. Maybe somehow it's not a market for you. You will figure that out by just, starting with those conversations. And that's why we recommend that the companies there too doesn't have to go that far before they come and start testing it and start talking to potential partners, customers, and
Thanks, Bill, Becky, and Peter. Again, really liked your presentation. It sounded to me like you're shifting investment from science to art, which I think is probably more where it belongs. But one of the things I heard you slip in just sort of quickly right towards the end there is that you're looking to invest in unique companies. I just wonder if you could unpick that definition of unique a little bit, because as you said, today, speed to the market is relatively easy. An idea can pop up and you can get to the market, but speed through the market is difficult. So I was wondering if perhaps some of your definition of uniqueness might be reflected in how you transition through a market rather than necessarily to the market.
That's a great point. Yeah, and so the other phrase we put around this uniqueness is the phrase unfair advantage. So we look for companies that have an unfair advantage that is not easily duplicated. And that covers a broader range than just technology, than just science and technology. So for example, a company we invested in recently, their unfair advantage is a go-to-market advantage. So their technology is relatively easily duplicated, but they've got some unbelievable unfair advantages in terms of their access to customers and their position in the marketplace. And so we violated our unique technology rule to incorporate this unfair go-to-market advantage that gives them the opportunity to accelerate through market acquisition as opposed to just having a competitive moat in any certain technology. So absolutely agree that when you're looking at something that is unique and compelling, speed through market, I like your phrase, speed through market is definitely a variable you got to pay attention to.
Actually, I don't necessarily agree that investors in New Zealand are fearful about the companies going to Silicon Valley. In fact, I think it's well accepted. But I do think investors are fearful, given the size of the market here, about the impact of the investors in Silicon Valley who are going to wipe them out. So I think that's probably where, and we've all had experience of that. And so that's life and reality. And I guess, Bill, you would say, keep some powder dry so that you can follow those. My question, though, is there was some commentary reported this morning, reporting on something that you said about our angel market here and our venture capital market, which I totally agree with. The snippet that I heard, which was we need to, our venture capital market is still far too small. So I'm interested in that observation and any sort of comments or suggestions about what we should be doing about that. And I should reveal, I work for the New Zealand Venture Investment Fund, which is the government venture capital fund. So,
Yeah. So, I'm sorry, you picked up a comment I made, and okay, right, yeah, right. So, I guess what I was talking about. Unfortunately, I haven't seen the article, so I'm not sure which line you picked up, but I think based on what you were saying. The opportunity here that I see from our visit is that there is, this room is part of the proof. There's a pretty robust angel community here. There are a lot of people who want and are actively, involved in searching out great early stage companies and investing in them. And what I've heard is that there is actually a pretty well-developed collaboration among the angel groups. I mean, everybody talks to everybody else because, this is New Zealand, you all know each other. Yeah, right? It's a very small country. So that's great. The question is whether you're tapping the pooled resources as well as you could be. And so one of my thoughts, because I don't know enough to know, but it seems that part of the possible solution to this dry powder thing is for each group to be a little bit more aggressive, hopefully leaning forward around, in addition to individual investments, pooling some capital and creating some, I know there's some small funds attached to some of the angel groups, but just building that up a little bit more. So you have the capacity both to support the companies still here and follow the companies as they flip up. And so, the trick to a robust venture ecosystem is getting enough capital, that is available in the ecosystem so that, one, you can sustain the investments locally, and two, continue the investments as the companies go global. So now, I wish I knew enough about sort of the various programs that you're involved with to have a more specific recommendation. But I think, pooling, I would also, and I would pool in each town. I would not pool to look nationally. I would want 4 or 5 pools and 4 or 5 teams who are, so that you have these separate teams each working in their regions and then collaborating around the needles. And then what I don't know is, can any of these angel funds become true venture funds, and what the ability is to go up from a 10, 15, 20 million fund to a 40, 50, $60 million fund, which would give you real clout. And would help, I think would help everybody in the ecosystem. If you guys could pull together 3, 4, 5, 40, 50, $60 million funds, that would be a dramatic improvement, I think, from where it is now, based on what I'm hearing from the entrepreneurs. Are you guys game? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you guys? Okay, I'm gonna reach into your wallet right now. All right. Is that good? Okay. Sorry. Okay.
I just wanted to clarify what I think I picked up for the investing objective in the garage. You're not going for IPOs, but rather trade sales or healthy companies that keep paying money back. You can get good returns.
I didn't quite. Sorry. Sorry.
And
yes.
that you're not so much going for IPOs as many most of the VCs do, but rather for trade sale. Your investors.
Yeah, I mean, so just for our own metric, just as an example, but I mean, so what we do, when we look at a company, our criterion is that we want to make sure that the first check we write can generate a 20x return. And so that then means we look at the company and where we are now, and then what we have to get to that 20x return. And because we're a seed investor and a smaller investor, frequently we can actually pencil out a 20x return at $100 to $200 million exit. That could be cool. Most likely that is going to be a trade sale. So we're okay with that idea. Ideally, we want the company to go all the way to an IPO. So generally, we prefer a company that has the potential to be a standalone public company. But frequently, we'll invest in a company that we know almost certainly it's going to be a trade sale, and almost certainly, it may not make sense as a standalone company because it's a compelling technology that somebody's going to have to pick up, and that's okay. So we're okay with that. And that's just the reality as well. It's just really hard to get to an IPO. And so if you excluded that, if you excluded trade sale as an exit path, then you're really limited your ability to play. Okay?
Over here. Hi, it's company Bill and Adiba. I'm interested to know how many companies a year you typically invest in and sort of the amount typically that you're investing. And also how many of those companies are from outside the US, and typically how long do you sort of get to know them, friend with them before you actually make an investment?
So last year was a very slow year for us. We did 3 investments. We've done 2 investments. Well, we haven't completed one of them this year. So that's kind of our pace these days. And there are a few things going on there. But in terms of the amount that we put in, typically our first check is $250,000 to $500,000. One of them we just did $100,000, in a seed round. And then the one, we're now doing, the one we're hoping to close soon, we're going to do $1.5 million. So we're kind of in that range. In terms of where they're from, one of them is pretty much from Thailand. All of them are in the U.S. So all of them are in the U.S. But background-wise, one is Taiwan, one is China. In terms of their background, American, well, historically Israel, but they've been over for like 15 years. So, to Adiba's point, you look at the background of the people who are now in Silicon Valley, and overwhelmingly they're from somewhere else. And I like to point out I'm from Chicago, so I'm a foreigner too.
It's quite amazing the difference in values. You talk about putting 100,000 maybe in, then you talk about a central fund of 50 to 60 million a year. I mean, the gap is huge. I mean, that's 5 of you really, which we're talking about individuals. So what I find interesting is that it's easy to talk about this stuff, and but when you're actually in it, it's a lot of tough mirrors, and it's bloody hard work, and it's
Yes.
right. It's
Right.
It's exhilarating and scary at the same time, but it's what I'm trying to say is there's an awful lot of talking about all of this, but the reality is I don't think particularly New Zealand, there's a lot of talking about digital being the future of New Zealand, but there's not a lot of action from the establishment, if you like, to be part of, have some sort of sense of ownership to it, because there are that lot of money around. And certainly government is doing this. Very pleasantly surprised with NZT and some of the stuff that they're doing. Coming from a very jaundiced area and that sort of thing, just experiencing what they're doing now in the last year is good. I'm not hearing much from anybody else.
So I don't know how many of you heard that, but I'm going to pick up in particular, and I totally agree with that the reality of raising funds, pulling together funds, doing the whole thing, finding hot deals, getting into hot deals, it's really hard stuff. But then you made this comment about the establishment, and now I'm wondering, aren't you the establishment?
Well, I think we are, but I don't think particularly in New Zealand, there is an establishment.
There is or is not?
Well, I'm talking about the infrastructure, the banking infrastructure, the legal, the accounting, all of the big names.
Yeah.
Most of which are my friends.
Yeah. You don't think they're supportive?
No.
Michael, what do you think? James, I'm sorry. James, excuse me, sir.
Yeah, I think just to pick up on Peter's point, if you look at the bank's position historically, when we're looking at sort of the tech startup sort of sector, we would look at traditionally where's the collateral, and that makes our job a little bit more tricky. But I think going forwards, absolutely, Peter and I have had this conversation on many occasions. We had a little bit this morning that we are trying to change the way of thinking. So yes, we're a bank, but actually let's think a little bit more business-like, and let's think a little bit more entrepreneurial. So in order to do that, you've got to change a little bit of behaviour and cultural shift. So we were in that engagement process, which is great because we haven't necessarily been there before. that we do see ourselves as a technical or technology-led organisation. But we are in the sort of the infancy period, but I think we are moving towards that. It's just a question of continuing that engagement that is already there.
Yeah, and I think, I see, entrepreneur ecosystems and innovation ecosystems worldwide. New Zealand is not that much different from most of the countries of the world. So it's not, this is something that's happening all over the world. And I think this is a part of where we're heading right now, where, it has been very traditional for such a long time, how the whole innovation entrepreneur, the lack of culture around that for such a long time. And right now there's a shift worldwide, everywhere. And that's why I'm saying the new generation of entrepreneurs, the new generation of investors that are coming in, everyone is kind of part of this new group that's out there. They don't see the world the same way that you see it. There are no hindrances. There's nothing in my way to actually get it there. And if I want my bank to get more, tech-oriented or be more entrepreneurial, then I will get my bank to do that. It's like that kind of attitude now we see a lot among entrepreneurs, among the new tech stars that are out there. And it doesn't matter where they come from. They want to get there, they will get there. It's going to happen. And their investors need to be there to be part of that journey.
Yeah, good morning. Can you speak a little bit about your distillery ratio? So you talked about the deal pace of currently 2, perhaps 3 a year. That's 2 or 3 investments a year. Out of how many do you look at? I'm interested in that ratio.
Yeah.
And somebody else in the room asked, and I don't think the question was quite finished, how long is your romance / DD period? Thank you.
Yeah. So we see, the numbers are funny the way you count them, but generally we see between 4,000 and 5,000 deals a year that we look at some level. It is kind of a gruesome part of our business that we have to say no to 99.7% of people that we talk to, right? Now, there's some brilliant entrepreneurs, actually, that we have come across where we've had the opportunity, because it's not a fit for us, to help some of our friends, help them and help some of our friends with the syndication of the deals. So we don't have to say no to every single one other than those 3. But, yes, it's really, really, really tough. The good news is that there's an increasing number of us out there in Silicon Valley and the rest of the world in terms of the number of VCs that are out there. In terms of the romance period, and this is something that, again, I hate to say out loud on stage. It is the reality that typically we spend, at least 6 months, and, so with, but it has taken one of our most successful investments. We romanced both ways for 2 years before we wrote a check. It was a 2-year process. It was an extremely controversial deal. And the 2 big challenges were, did we believe the technology worked, and could we convince anyone else to come into the deal with us? And that was the hardest part, was to get somebody else into the deal with us, because another part of our solution is we don't ever do a deal by ourselves. Because, again, we're a small fund. So we're a $40 million, our current fund is a $40 million fund, and we don't dare take on an investment without somebody else with deep pockets, at the table. And that's the other way, we want to make sure that we don't, entirely get crushed.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi.
There you go. Thank you so much for coming through down to New Zealand. It's absolutely fantastic to have some of your experience here. And, Garishacom is of legendary status, so it's great to have you here. But just on that, you've been involved in the industry and seen it grow from the mid-1990s through to now. And now you've seen a number of players out there of scale, for example, 500 startups and the likes of them, how do you feel clearly in contrast, quite different than then, but how do you feel the ecosystem is stacking up now, and what would be a logical way forward for New Zealand businesses to engage, and what would serve New Zealand tech companies best when they get out that way?
Yeah. Well, again, the approach we take is not the same approach that every VC takes, and some take a similar approach in different sectors, which is to say we focus on companies that have a compelling and unique technological advantage that are not easily duplicated, right? Or in some cases, another unfair advantage that is not easily duplicated. The way the world has grown now, I mean, the good news is that everything is trending. I mean, you cannot find a sector in the global economy that is not ripe for entrepreneur, innovation, and disruption. It's hard to think of anything that is not addressable now. So there's unbelievable opportunity out there to go out and build meaningful companies that are going to make a dent in some sector or the other. And so now then each entrepreneur has to figure out, what do I have that gives me a compelling advantage going after some one of those sectors? And, that's the key. I'm not going to say that there's a specific technology. Clearly, New Zealand has a ton of areas where they can be globally competitive. Clearly, New Zealand is globally competitive in graphics and animation-based technologies. Unbelievable what you guys can do. Underneath that are some really important compute technologies. There are infrastructure compute technologies that enable those kinds of technologies that are applicable to other areas, like big data, which you don't think of as a graphics and animation problem, but there's a lot of underlying technology that is very, very similar. Way at the other end of the spectrum, you've got all of this agricultural, sort of insight, experience, and capability. You should have a competitive advantage in developing high-value technologies that will optimize the agricultural sector, because you can do test beds, and you have a lot of historical experience. We met the guys from the Crop Research Institute down in Christchurch yesterday. I guess Canterbury has an extraordinary ag tech capacity. We met in Tonga. We met the TIDA people, the 3D manufacturing people. So they are globally successful. Working with the U.S. aerospace industry on technologies for 3D printing of titanium and other metals that are globally competitive. And so you guys have lots and lots and lots of opportunity for a unique and compelling advantage in a whole bunch of different sectors. So, and given the relative flatness of the world, there's some water in between us, but, who cares, right? There's a lot of land in between New York and California, so whatever, right? So, I'm just getting carried away with how enthusiastic I am about the opportunity here that you guys have.
Which is great, because you're not enough about it. We love it, yeah. There are amazing opportunities, and I think to your question as well, that, there are different opportunities for the New Zealand companies to tap into the Silicon Valley ecosystem, and for the organization that I work for, Silicon Valley Forum, is a way to get support into that as well. The program that you're doing, Peter, then of course you have the 500 startups, the Y Combinator, all those that could be
I mean? Boy, we have a skeptic here. Yeah, what?
I
Intervention.
totally agree, and I think we probably, there would be a number of people in this room who know that, in fact, in terms of your description of where we need to be heading, we are on that path, most certainly, and have been for some time. So it is exactly what we see in New Zealand is that we've had back in the early 2000s a first round of new venture capital fund managers who came into the market. Some failed, some succeeded and continued, and then we've had some angel groups that are very strong, that have developed, that have made some good investments, that are now migrating to become more like a small venture style fund, certainly in that 30 to 50 million size, and we're also seeing a couple of larger scale, if you like, growth funds operating in the market as well. So I think we are actually well on that path and understand well, and but I totally agree we've got to continue to tell our story and maybe lie a little bit right from time to time, like the entrepreneurs, to, well, not lie, but tell the story with a little bit more embellishment, so that
Learn how to brag.
and learn how to brag, exactly. And so I think there is actually some really good things happening in the market, and I mean, we're investors in venture capital funds here, and the pipeline actually is looking very healthy for New Zealand. I think we'll see some new funds emerging in New Zealand with, and typically they are funds that have been founded by previous entrepreneurs who have had success, who understand the journey and who have decided themselves that they want to continue to support entrepreneurial endeavour. So I think we're on the right track, but we do need to continue, and it is a long journey. So, and thank you so much to both of you to come and keep helping us to celebrate what we're doing and to give us some sage advice as well that keeps us on track.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course, I'm pretty interested that you interviewed 5,000 companies and you picked 3. Of the 4,997 you didn't pick, how many have you looked back and thought, fucker, I missed that one?
I don't want to go. I don't want to go there. Yes.
So if the answer to that is quite a few. But my point is, sitting here, and I'm coming from the entrepreneur side of things, and the message I sort of heard was, I'm not going to swing the bat unless I'm 100% sure that the ball's going to go over the fence.
I'm sorry, that's you as entrepreneur speaking?
No, actually, as an investor. So you're going to pick 3 companies. So it's like, I'm going to wait, and I'm going to choose the ball that comes that I know, bang, when I hit it, it's gone.
Yeah.
In our world, it's Brendan McCollum. I'm not going to swing the bat unless I'm going to get a 6. But the reality is...
Wait, that's right. Is this a cricket metaphor?
Yeah, it's a cricket metaphor. But the reality is, I'm looking forward to an entrepreneur now, and I'm thinking if I can get single-digit penetration in a global market, I'm actually pretty happy. And that's a pretty good result. I'm not going to grow a horn and turn into a unicorn, but I'm going to get a little piece of something that's pretty big. Now, how, as an investor, do you look at that? I mean, from the sounds of things, Garage wouldn't even consider something like that.
Well, okay, so, the framework of a little piece of a global market, it could be okay. It depends on your position in that little piece. So if, for example, you could have a restaurant that has 5% of the neighborhood, and that's a little piece of a big amount, right? But there's nothing special about, maybe there's a little bit something special about that restaurant, but there's no particular growth or scalability aspect, et cetera, et cetera. So that's not good. That's not good. But, if you have a compelling technology that addresses the very high end of a big market, and by addressing the very high end, you're only addressing, the top 12% of the market, and you have 6% of that 12%, wow. Right? That's amazing. So it's a market segmentation question. Well, the issue is you've got to have a compelling advantage in whatever sector, whatever sliver of a larger market you are going after. Because rents come from, positive rents come from disproportionate advantage, right? You get multiples because you are not easily assailable. That's why you get a multiple. That's why the market values you higher. If you're just a mediocre player in a big market and accidentally that gives you a percentage, you're not going to get a good multiple. So that's, so the percentage thing is kind of hard to weigh. But, we want to see someone that wants to dominate the sector that they're going after, even if it's a tiny little sector. Because, almost every global tiny little sector is big enough. I mean, it's hard. It's hard in almost anything you go after. It's hard not to have the potential for $1 billion opportunity. I'm sure there's something you can dream of, but short of going after a big restaurant. But we looked at a company recently. Their entire business was a document management tool for filing patents. And on the face of it, I thought, okay, God bless, but really? And they said, wait a second, you don't get it. There are 3 million patents filed every year in the United States alone. And the process of submitting patents is extremely expensive and painful. And they were able to pencil out that this could be a multi-$100 million business. And you do some diligence on it, and you go, that's right, there's nothing in that market right now, other than Microsoft Word. There's nothing in that market right now. And, that could be pretty interesting. So I'm not sure we're going to write the check, but, it's amazing. In a world where everything is now addressable, it's mind-boggling how many big companies you could build. So your comment sounded like you're happy enough with a little company, but I don't think.
I think it's a mindset thing too.
The point is that
Because it's like, do you want to go big, or do you want to shoot for the other? That's the question. You want to see entrepreneurs that actually see the big. They might not get the big, but at least you're trying to,
Ask him what he does.
And I think that's the mindset thing, but just to make sure that,
carry on the sporting analogy, sometimes you can sit there and you can try to win the game by hitting home run. But sometimes the team that wins is the guy that gets on base, like Moneyball. I got my base, and then I stole the base.
Totally.
And then I got base hit, and then I got in. So you're investing in the singles, you're investing in the small hits.
Right.
Eventually, you're going to win the game. But as an investor, he's not going to invest in I'm going to invest in that team winning. It's the money ball. I'm going to invest in that guy being on base. Because when you get on base, you win.
Well, and I totally agree with that philosophy, and that is, that's our thesis, that if you have a compelling technology, there's inherent value there, even if it's not a home run overnight. And so you can think of it as, we know early on, there are a bunch of people who appreciate this compelling technology, but it may take a while. And it may get taken out before we get to the unicorn, but that can be okay. So, hope in the abstract, I want to know now. Okay. Okay. So let's, right? You make aluminum bats, right? Okay.
Well, it seems like in the world now, the successful companies are the ones that have focus and they stick to it. They pick a niche and they go into it. So we're nothing unique. We do web streaming. There's nothing unique in that. But we're web streaming funerals.
Okay.
So if you can't make it to a funeral, we're going to put that online.
Okay.
We're going to get people that can't get here to share that experience.
Okay. All right. Okay. So again, almost certainly, that's big enough if you can get a big enough percentage of the marketplace. The question is, can you be the dominant brand in that space? And my anxiety is going to be, well, that's kind of easy enough for someone else to do, but probably nobody else is going to do it, right? But we got to admit, there was a flurry of companies, believe it or not, there was a flurry of companies that were going to create tombstones that were connected to the internet. And so you could stream the life story of, the dear departed. It was, they actually got funded. It was, and I'm not sure what happened to them. They didn't get funded.
We probably
time for one more question.